Hello, Steve Arts 89. Well, you wouldn't know from the content on my channel, but I'm actually a huge horror fan. And I spend a lot of time watching horror movies and TV series, and next to sci-fi, that's my favourite thing, which is not that uncommon for a science fiction fan. But there's not a lot happening. But something that was happening was Clarice. Now, I loved Silence of the Lambs when I first saw it, but it's not the kind of film I'd watch regularly. So I sort of just watched it once or twice. And I wasn't that, I watched the sequels, I wasn't that interested in the character. I know everyone was carrying on about Hannibal, the series. I still haven't seen a whole episode. I saw about 15 minutes and thought it had an interesting tone, and I had no idea what was happening, and I thought I probably should at least watch the first season. Still haven't seen it. Then Clarice came out, and it was done by Alex Kurtzman, and as a Star Trek fan, of course I have a natural hatred for him, because he's just ruined Star Trek. And there was a lot of fear from horror fans and fans of Silence of the Lambs and Hannibal that he was going to ruin it too. And the idea of doing a Silence of the Lambs series about Clarice without any even mention of, well, I guess I won't mention his name, you know, the sort of main character of the whole sort of series. I mean, you could sort of argue who the main character is, Clarice or Hannibal, but people were sort of spelling doom and expecting disaster, and it came out and it didn't get very favourable reviews. It was basically just called a procedural using, you know, a known IP, basically. It's like, well, maybe if we do a procedural with, you know, Clarice, you know, it'll do better than just making up some random new female character for a procedural. So it didn't go very well. The idea of doing it without Hannibal, the idea of not, because of licensing, and this is a huge licensing thing, because what I've realised with a lot of these Hollywood people is they are just, some of these producers, they are just grifters, and they are just seeking out whatever IPs they can buy and then what they can get out of them and how they can use them the most. They're not about storytelling, creativity, about doing something for the fans, for the audience, respecting the original material. It's just what can I do with this IP that I've invested in? That's sort of just, they're just purely the business side of show business. And it didn't look good. I haven't seen it honestly. I don't know if it's good or bad, but it has expectations. A regular procedural wouldn't have expectations, but Clarice had expectations. The idea that it would involve at least her recovery from or reaction to or her life leading up to Hannibal, some element, some relation, but because of the IP, which I just mentioned, they can't even mention him. They just can't deal with it at all. It's just purely a TV show about a police detective, and it just happens to be Clarice. So it didn't do very well. It was the bottom, actually it wasn't the bottom rating first run scripted drama. Star Trek Discovery was for CBS. But because that was technically a streaming show that was put onto network TV, like after the fact, people are sort of not counting it. So they're sort of saying Clarice is the bottom, so that's the bottom. So there are rumours that it's been cancelled because, of course, MGM was bought by Amazon, and apparently Clarice had been given a second season renewal. I hadn't heard about that because I wasn't paying that close attention, and it's not something Star Trek fans who hate Alex Kurtzman are going to brag about. Oh, his new show's doing well and got a second season, so I didn't know anything about it. But apparently negotiations with the studio have collapsed because you can look at this two ways. Some people are saying it was so bad it got cancelled because people expected Silence of the Lambs and Hannibal being involved, and they basically just got a procedural with, you know, a female officer called Clarice, you know, just using the IP and that. And other people are saying no, it's purely a issue with the companies, because supposedly there was good faith negotiations happening, and they were going to move Clarice from I don't know where it was originally screening. I thought it was CBS. Yeah, okay. So depending on who you talk to, MGM either abruptly stopped good faith negotiations and were closing in on an agreement, or the studio opted to walk after being offered a mediocre deal it could not accept. Yeah, the show, it started off the spring on the bubble at CBS, but it didn't do very well. Apparently, it supposedly did better on Paramount Plus, but the fact that we can't see those ratings and they're hidden, those viewing numbers are hidden, a lot of people don't trust them. So people say, oh, it's a hit, everyone's watching. Sometimes it's like, well, no one's watching, no one cares, but you're saying that because you're trying to create some excitement and get people to go and watch it, because there's no actual proof. And at some point, they're going to have to start quantifying these sort of viewing numbers, because the more the industry changes, the more they're making money out of this. People are going to be investing money, and they want to actually be able to see how well the product is doing, and if they, are going to continue to invest and promote. And so I don't see this being an ongoing, permanent problem, but it is a temporary problem where studios can really hide how a show is doing, and you really don't know. So it appears that the news is that it's been cancelled. The assumption is because it was bad and didn't get views. But the studio is trying to say it's because MGM wouldn't negotiate with them, and there was issues with MGM being now owned by Amazon. Amazon didn't want to give it to Paramount Plus, or it's political now apparently. So it's some people are saying it's a quality thing. Other people are saying it's political. I'm not sure. I was going to read through this whole article for my video, but I'm not going to. According to sources close to Viacom, CBS, Paramount, and CBS Studios, made most, if not all, of the concessions MGM asked for in the business terms, but MGM would still not agree to a deal. Apparently, the licensing fee for the show went from $1.2 million to $1.3 million an episode at CBS, where the business model is based on deficit financing, a $3.8 million per episode Paramount Plus, to $3.8 million at Paramount Plus, which as a streamer adheres closer to cost plus model, blah, blah, blah. So they're sort of suggesting, they'd sorted it out right down to the money, but I don't think anyone really knows what the final decision was. Maybe it was a matter of quality, maybe it was a matter of just not having the audience and not actually thinking it was worth investing in. Often when a studio or someone comes into a studio, they just want their own stuff. They just want to get rid of what was there before and just create their own stuff, for many reasons: for ego, for prestige, because if something started on someone else's watch fails, they are the ones who suffer for it, so they just want it. So it's very difficult to tell what has happened here. But the bad thing is, if Kurtzman doesn't have Clarice to focus on, he may turn his attention back to Star Trek, which is not good. He needs to be kept as far away as possible from Star Trek. And when he was working on Clarice, the assumption was they'd given him Clarice, said, look, we don't want you working on Star Trek anymore. The fans hate you. It's a disaster. Here, go take this, go, do that, and just leave us alone, and we'll, have other people come in, and you can still get your credit, you get your pay and everything, but we just need you to go over there now. So he's got nowhere to be now, so he's probably going to be back in Star Trek's business. So a little bit worried about that, but not particularly sad to see this show go. I didn't care a whole lot about Clarice. She was only interesting because of Hannibal. Herself, she wasn't really that interesting. I mean, Jodie Foster's great, but if Jodie Foster's not playing her, I'm not sure what the attraction or point of her existing is. I'm not sure why they even did it, except from, IP, that's all they could do. Well, we won't give you Hannibal, we'll give you Clarice. Go make a series with that. So, yeah. Okay, so I had a little bit of a look at that article and some of the stuff, and basically there really isn't a straight out answer. I sort of thought I'd missed something, but no, they were just talking about the deals, the differences between the deals. There are other shows from CBS that have gotten better deals, like SEAL Team and what was the other show? Evil something, I don't know, I can't remember now. But other shows that basically were moved on to Paramount Plus or onto other streaming services apparently got better deals. Now, like I said before, the 1.3 million were the licensing fees for an episode at CBS. And when Paramount Plus, what they were offering to pay was 3.8 million, which only covered about 78% of the cost, and they needed to cover at least 82% of the cost or something. So basically the licensing fee wasn't big enough to cover the cost, and they weren't prepared to cover the difference themselves, which may say something about the success of the show, and the possible money-making potential of the show, that they didn't feel like they could even cover a small percent of the cost. So that's one argument, that it was all negotiations and they got a bad deal. And the other is that it was a critical failure and it wasn't going to be successful no matter what platform it was put on. It wouldn't be able to grow or increase its value or viewership or anything. So it's unsure really what's happened, but either way it's not coming back unless there's some miracle and some sudden abrupt negotiations happen to save the show. It's gone, and unfortunately that means Kurtzman's going to be going back to Picard or, God help us, Strange New Worlds. Hopefully he just finds another project, but it's sort of hard to say what's going to happen. But I just sort of noticed this and thought I had to have a closer look at that, because the word around the fandom menace sort of video YouTubers was sort of like, it was a failure, so they cancelled it, of course, and that was sort of it. And I thought there might be more to it, but it's unclear. But it's gone. I might watch it eventually, I don't know. But I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you thought of the series if you actually watched it. I don't know who watched it. I don't know where it was available. Aside from being on CBS, I'm not sure where it was streamed. I don't know how I'm going to see it if I watch it. If I do. Bye.